Welcome to the Connected Spirit Podcast, a space where the mystical and the human experience merge, where we explore what it really means to walk a spirit-led path. I'm Courtney Dawson, an ethical medium and mentor, and for as long as I can remember, I have felt the presence of the spirit world. But my journey hasn't been simple. It's been one of self-discovery, healing from religious and emotional trauma, navigating fear, judgment, and the loneliness that comes with embracing something the world doesn't always understand. This podcast is here to take what was once considered woo and bring it into the real lived experience of being human. Because mediumship isn't just something we do, it's who we are. Here we dive into the conversations no one else is having, breaking down misconceptions, exploring the unseen, and normalizing the journey of deep connection. We'll talk about the beauty and the struggle of being a medium. We'll laugh, we'll reflect, we'll go deep. And most importantly, we'll remember who we are, why we're here, and how spirit moves through us all. So if you've ever felt something more, if you've ever questioned the unseen, or if you're simply ready to embrace the fullness of your spiritual path, you're in the right place. Hello, friend. Welcome back to the Connected Spirit Podcast. Today we have a returning guest, amazing woman who I'm so honored to have here today, Dr. Lotte Valentine. She is an author, evidential psychic medium, medical medium, ancestral healer, and creator of Kindraya, a transformational ancestral healing method. She is the award-winning author of Med School After Menopause, The Journey of My Soul, and sought-after international speaker. As faculty for the Shift Network and Humanities team, she teaches spirituality and ancestral healing. After 2 near-death experiences awakened her intuitive gifts, she was guided to medical school at age 54. You heard that right. She hosts Dr. Lotte's Science with Soul and collaborates with HemiSync on ancestral healing meditations. Dr. Lotte, so good to have you here.
Oh, it's so good to be back. So great to see you again.
I feel like your bio doesn't even fully encompass everything that you do. You wear a lot of hats. You make a big impact in the world, and that is just continuing to grow. So, before we dive into the work that you're doing now and sharing with the world, I'd love to know a little bit about what led you to explore ancestral healing and how did Kindraya come into being?
That is an excellent question because it's not a straightforward journey like people might think.
Yeah.
It is really, it's a combined, what came out of my own life experiences in the end. So when you look at my life, my life took a 180-degree turn in 1992 and 1994 when I had my near-death experiences. And for people who have heard my story, they've heard that during one of those events, when I left my body, went to the other side, I was shown this, what I call the silvery, glittery fishnet around the earth, which is, in old traditions known as Indra's net. And I was told that everything on earth is connected to each other, and everything on earth is connected up to this grid. And for years and years and years, we lived in the San Francisco Bay Area at the time in the early 2000s. And I went to that library and combed the shelves to find anything that could show me what was that? What was that silvery, glittery fishnet? And everything is connected to this thing. And I'm sure I just looked in the wrong department because I wasn't, taken to Buddhism or Indra's net or anything like that. I was looking for the more scientific approach. And couldn't find anything. So eventually I had to put it to rest after years of looking for any kind of answers or explanation. And I said, that's it. I'm just going to put it to rest. It is what it is. I may never know. And for many, many years, I became, more clairvoyant, clairaudient, clairsentient. And I know that I was born a medium now. And I've been told that by my teachers at Arthur Findlay College in England. And I didn't believe them when they first told me that. And but those experiences is what awakened me. And I know now from having worked with astrologers and numerologists that my first near death experience is clearly visible in my astrological chart. And I was told that on that day, the planets were in a specific positions And it basically was a reminder for myself that I had to leave my body that day, understand that there was something greater than just me being here on earth. I was quite the quite the scientist, and did not have any religious beliefs or a belief in the afterlife, belief in the spirit world, anything like that. So when I had those experiences, it really turned my world upside down. But now I know that that was to awaken me and remind me of why it is that I incarnated into this life in the first place. So it is interesting because many times I feel very privileged to have gotten to learn that, even though I didn't get to learn it until much, much, much later in life. I had to live with that experience for about 30 years before I finally got some answers to that. But it is really interesting now because I can see how we're all so divinely guided. We all, even though we don't think so, we just go through life and we think that, it's happening to me or I'm not happy with my life or whatever it is. But I'm going to say there's always a reason why we go through, I call it the muddy fields. When we're walking through that muddy field, and I walked through that field for a good 12 years because I had a blood disorder after I had my near death experiences, which literally caused my second near death experience. And it took me 6 years, basically, until I could go to the grocery store. And it took me another 6 years, 12 years total, until I got my life back.
Mhm.
So I lived through that. So I know what it feels like to feel like you're never going to ever get well again. You're never going to return to work. You're just going to be somebody at home for the rest of your life, struggling with just simple things like going to the grocery store. And it wasn't until I had to live through all that. And then all my superconscious abilities were awakened, like your clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, your intuitive abilities. But the funny part is that, we all have these abilities to a greater or lesser extent, right? Everybody that is intuitive is not going to be a professional medium. Everybody that can sing happy birthday is not going to become Taylor Swift, right? We all know we can all sing. You might be off key, but we still love to sing, right? We can all sing, but it doesn't mean we're going to be a big performer or a big name. But it's the same thing with these intuitive abilities. And so, to make a long story short, all these abilities were awakened. I eventually went to medical school when I was 54. As soon as I graduated, I literally was sent to Arthur Findlay College to study mediumship by just random acquaintances that brought me messages from the spirit world that told me I had to go there. And then as soon as I did that, and then I was working, I was in clinic, and I started doing mediumship readings on the side. And I was working with people, and I had like four clients in a row, and you know what this feels like because you're a medium. And they're that was like the second time I was like, wow, this person almost feels like the person I had, a few days ago for somebody else. Like, why is it so similar? But no, it is a different person. You confirm, no, it's a different person. But the story that came through was the same. So, four people in a row, I got the same, and I'm sure you've gotten this story many times yourself because it's common, as we know. The spirit world wants to come and give us the love and the support that we need. And got the grandmother every single time. I got the grandmother who had married an abusive person that was physically abusive towards grandma and towards the children. And then the daughter in the family would be the client's mom every single time. And the client's mom married what? Somebody just like her dad, somebody that was also physically abusive. And so then I would tell the client, I said, hey, this woman had a really hard life, and I can tell that she was, hurt by her husband. And then your mom married somebody and that was your father. And you were also hurt by your father. Is this correct? Is this story correct? And the client would every single time say, yes, that is correct. That was my grandmother. That was the story, and my dad and my mom. So then, of course, at all these coincidences, right? I learned about ancestral healing, and I said, well, and I was like attending some big summit, and they were talking about ancestral healing, and I said, you know, there's something to this. It's like I just felt really, really guided that I had to take this course. And ancestral healing, when you study it, is a form of counseling. And you
Mm.
learn kind of, the patterns that get passed down, like in any counseling. And we had a lot of counseling in med school as well. So I studied that and then I started working with it. But as now that I've been working in it with it for many years, it has become a different approach because when I work with it, because I'm a medium, it's not like you shut off your mediumship, right? It's always there. And so sometimes I would even have the spirit world come in during an ancestral healing. I'm doing counseling with people and the spirit world come in. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is the person's father or this is the person's grandma that's here. And they would help me, resolve the issue. So I started working mediumistically, but using my counseling skills that I had learned, but then also using, that led me to study polyvagal theory and the nervous system. And I became a teacher for that and a healer for polyvagal theory. And then the somatic approach, right? How everything is stored in your body. So then I realized it just became this very integrative approach where I integrate my own superconscious abilities, sometimes the client's superconscious abilities, because sometimes we don't know anything about our ancestors, or for many of us, we never met grandpa. And then the family didn't talk about grandpa. And there's little known about it because nobody was really willing to share a lot of information. And I'm going to say this is very common. Almost every single family has that. Or sometimes we don't know barely anything because everybody died before we were born, or we're adopted, or there are other circumstances that don't allow us to know a lot about our family. And sometimes the client would say, in my meditation, I saw my grandma or my grandfather that I have never met. And this is what came to me. And I don't know if it's true, but this is, and you know exactly what that was. That was a visitation from the spirit world, right? They came to show her that so that she could create that healing for herself, so that she ended up on my screen to work it all out and create healing in her life and change her life, change her family's life because she's changing her life, right? And you can see that ripple effect of healing that's spreading, all because she had a spiritual experience herself that she wasn't even sure if, right? And many times people aren't sure, did my mind make that up? Where did that come from? Why did I see that? Is there any truth to that? Well, I'm going to say, of course there is. All right. There's a reason why we have these experiences. So, Kindraya has been born out of this. So it's not just that we're working with a cognitive approach like we do in counseling, where we're trying to understand the patterns, but we're also working super consciously. We're working with our clairs, we're working with our bodies. What do we feel in our body when, with all the different struggles that we have? And so Kindraya became born out of really my own experience, my own life experiences, and trying to help other people heal.
That is just a fascinating story. When I'm listening to you, I go, oh my goodness, it makes so much sense to me why traditional talk therapy doesn't always help people and can leave so much stuff unresolved. And we still see those patterns continue through generation and generation, regardless of how much time and money has been spent into inner healing, shadow work, therapy. So this is a way more comprehensive approach that's really holistic and looking at not just the human and the emotional aspect, but you're looking, like you said, at that super conscious level. I would love to know, what did you discover about lineage and inherited patterns that completely changed how you understand healing?
Yeah, the patterns that get passed down, right? And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, and it's interesting how you said, we do all this talk therapy, and
Yeah.
talk therapy can be great. Sometimes we can resolve our problems, and sometimes we can't, right? And I'm going to say, I think many times when we don't resolve it, it's because it's like we're going around the record in the same groove, right? And it's when we look at a problem, if we say, a common problem is typical for women is to not be seen and heard in the relationship. The mental load is mostly carried by women. right? What we're going to eat, what we're going to buy, how we're going to cook it, when we're going to cook it, when the laundry is going to be done, when the kids are being dropped off at school, the kids' homework, the kids' snacks, the kids' field trips, right? A lot of those, all those things that have to just work out in the schedule and things have to be like clockwork, a lot of that still falls on women, even though women are in the workforce. They still carry, I'm going to say, the brunt of that load. And thank you all to all the men who are stepping up to the plate, right? Because what I see in my work, right, is it's a lot of that still. And when we try to resolve an issue like that, so we say, I don't feel seen and heard in my relationship, and I'm the one who's doing everything, right? The talk therapy is like, okay, well, let's put a pattern in place where we can make the husband more responsible. Let's make a chart. Let's divide the tasks, right? But instead of saying, why is it that I'm finding myself in this position? Right. Which is a whole different question.
Yeah.
Because the talk therapy or, our normal response is, how do I change that person? How do I make my partner take more responsibility? How am I going to remember? How am I going to make him remember to take the trash out? He only emptied two of the trash. He always forgets the third. How am I going to make him remember it? And we try to come up with all these methods of changing the other person. But instead, start saying, why is it that I'm in this position in the first place? And that's when you start looking at the patterns. What has been passed down, right? And we can see many different things that get passed down. I should just tell you a story. How do we, because it's easy to relate to a story than trying to conceptualize things. So if we look at, let's do like a lineage break. But let's talk about the light mapping system before I tell you a story. So with Kindraya, there I developed this thing called the light mapping system, and each letter stands for something. So L stands for lineage break. I stands for interruption of love. G stands for generational rejection. H stands for hidden alignment, and T for transgenerational karma. Now, I'm going to tell you what they all mean. But we use the light mapping system so we have like a science informed way of putting the pattern in a certain place. But then we're also going to use our superconscious abilities and our somatic abilities to map it. So when we look at, let's say we have a woman, and this woman, when she was a toddler, let's say she was 2 years old, and she was the youngest of, four kids. Her mom suddenly passes away. And so here is this little 2-year-old. Mom has passed away. It's the early 1900s. Food is tight. The war is coming, right? And nobody can care for her. And so she's sent to an orphanage. Well, what did that little child learn? What did this woman learn when she was 2? She learned, her nervous system learned that mom loves me so much. Mom is my safety net. I love my mom and I will never leave her side, right? That's her safety net. She loves her mom. Next morning, she wakes up. Mom's not there. Where did mom go? Oh, I don't know. Everybody was sad and mom was gone. Okay. So that nervous system says love can just be pulled away like you pull the rug out of from underneath you. So love is not something that is predictable. It's something that's unpredictable. So then she gets sent to an orphanage, and we can only imagine that her life was quite different in an orphanage in the early 1900s, say. And she grows up and she becomes an adult. She finds a man and she gets married and she has her own kids. So the first thing that happened is that we had a lineage break. Somebody in the family disappeared quickly. Like they could have been sent to war, they could have passed away. It's a lineage break. There's something in the lineage that just abruptly ends, right? But the survivor of that, right, which is in this case this woman, her nervous system adapted to that loss and said, love is not safe. It can just end in any moment. And you have to be careful about giving love because that's uncomfortable now because love is unpredictable. So she grows up, she marries, she has kids, and she has a son. Let's say she has a son, and this son, and she loves her son. She loves her son so much. But love feels a little scary to her because of her nervous system adaptation when she was a toddler, which she doesn't even understand. It's just, it became her, right? Because she learned it when she was a toddler. This is how you act and react around these situations. So even though she loves her son so much, she can't quite give it. Like it feels unsafe. She's not the let's snuggle up on the couch and watch a movie and I'm gonna kiss your forehead, right? She doesn't know how to do that because she didn't experience it herself, and doesn't feel safe. So this son grows up with what? He experienced, the interruption of love. The love is there, but it's not reaching him. So he's walking around saying, why? Why do I feel alone in the world? Why is it that I know my mom loves me, but like I don't feel loved. I don't feel like I belong. I feel abandoned. Right? So he's walking around with all those concerns in his life. But it really came from his mom's nervous system adapting. So when he is little, right? When he is an infant, when that boy is an infant, when we are infants, we don't regulate our nervous system ourselves. We co-regulate with the adults around us, with our caretakers. And so what we learn as infants, we tune into the parent's nervous system is this is, you're my safety net. Without you, I'm going to die because we're an infant. And so we learn that and we co-regulate with that. But now think of the mom's nervous system where she was at, right? Love is not safe and I can't really be there 100% and the love can be interrupted. That's her adoption, but it gets passed down to the next generation. So see how it just goes on and on and on, and it just trickles down through the generations. But when we experience the son in today's world says, I feel abandoned. I don't feel loved. I don't know what it is. Okay, talk therapy. What is it that happened to you? Tell me about your own experiences. Well, I don't know. My mom always loved me. She always had birthday parties for me. She always took me to school. She's always there when I get home. She fed me, she clothed me, she read me good night stories, but I don't know what it is. I just don't feel loved, right? Because we're not looking deep enough. We're looking at the surface. We're just looking at the current situation, kind of, and a little bit where we came from, but we're not digging down deeper, saying, what did the last generation, the generation in front of me, and my previous generations, what did they adapt to? What did their nervous system adapt to that was then passed down? And there's this great study about the mice study, which is called epigenetic inheritance of ancestral odor fear conditioning. And they took mice, and it was published in Nature of Neuroscience back in 2013. And they took male mice and they exposed them to a cherry blossom smell. And every time they smelled this cherry blossom smell, they would give the male mice an electric shock. So of course the male mice is saying, well, I don't want to smell the cherry blossom smell. That's dangerous. They're gonna I'm gonna get this shock. So they avoid the cherry blossom smell. Well, they took the sperm of the mice, artificially inseminated the female mice. So the female mice never even met the male mice. It's not like they could have a little communication saying, stay away from the cherry blossom smell. They never even met. So the female mice give birth to the mice pups. The mice pups are now jumpy and scared of the cherry blossom smell, even though they have never been exposed. Their mothers have never been exposed. It came from the sperm. It was an adoption by the male father mice. But not only that, the baby mice made more receptors so they could smell the cherry blossom smell at even lower frequency. So even the tiniest amounts of cherry blossom smell would send a signal, danger, get away. So think about, I mean, it's just fascinating, right? Because it's just one generation. And, we have studies that show that Holocaust survivors also have, they made epigenetic changes and they have identified genes in humans that have changed for the Holocaust survivors and all the way down to their grandchildren. So it's really fascinating because we can see how it's not the trauma itself that gets passed down, it is the nervous system adaptations, right? So when you look at the mice, you can say, well, the nervous system adapted to be scared of that. So they made more receptors so they can smell it at even a lower level, right? But think of, of course, we have to keep doing all the research and all the things. But when you're working with ancestral healing, that's also what you see. So you can see how people's nervous systems are adapting, because when our ancestors, I mean, think of our ancestors, right? I mean, we all came from somewhere else in America and Canada, and right, we all immigrated from somewhere else in the world. All those people had very traumatic experiences, and it's not that far away. It's our grandparents or great grandparents that all came on the ships back in the day, starving, fleeing, and we still have an influx of these people today. And so when we look at our ancestors, almost all of us have ancestors, either immediate, parents, grandparents, or great grandparents that were part of some kind of a war or very difficult situations. Think about how all the adoptions that they made, and think about how many of our own struggles sometimes don't make sense in our own life. And I'm going to say that's because we're looking too much on the surface, and we need to start looking deeper down, to really uncover what it is that's setting off any struggles, any situations. It doesn't matter what your struggle is. If you're on your fifth relationship, or if you're on your sixth job and you're never getting that promotion, I don't care what it is, there's going to be an ancestral pattern to it.
This makes perfect sense why personal healing and traditional therapies don't work for people.
Yeah, exactly. It
And
works for some, right? But it
yeah,
doesn't work for everyone.
no.
Yeah.
No, this just I'm thinking of certain things that have gone on in my own family with clients, friends, and we see why this is just like light bulbs are going off, Dr. Lotte. I'm like, oh my goodness, this makes sense why certain patterns just seem to persist,
Yes.
regardless of what you're doing, whether that's personal
Mhm.
therapy or even spiritual work. This is so much different. Oh my goodness. Okay.
Yeah.
Kindraya works cognitively, somatically, and there's that superconscious awareness. What does working across those layers actually look like in practice?
It's amazing because I'm going to say, in order to create that deep healing and the transformations that you get to witness working with people
Yeah.
and seeing like you said, like the light bulbs going off, like
Mhm.
all of a sudden it clicks, right? And people who's taken my courses before, they'll say like, I just have to tell you, like this last weekend, I was with my girlfriend, and I now know what her issue is. I can see it because of the ancestral patterns. Like I know her family, I know her mom, and I can see the pattern. I can see exactly why it is that she's struggling with what's going on in her life, right? Because I'm going to say, once you learn to see the patterns, once you learn to tune in intuitively, like I said, we're all intuitive people,
Mhm.
and we get information, whether we want it or not. Sometimes we know when somebody's telling us the truth and when somebody's making something up, right? Especially people that are close to us. You're like,
Yeah.
that's what that person said, but I know it's not true, right? We know because our intuition tells us, right? And that's the same thing with this. And it's amazing to see the transformation, and awakening this within people, because once you awaken this, it's not something you're just doing to heal one thing in your life, because once you awaken this and you start seeing the world in this way, it's just going to be like constantly peeling back that onion. I mean, I've been doing this for years. I still, every time I teach a course, something always comes up. And I'm like, wow, I never saw that with grandpa. Wow, now we know where that's coming from. Oh my God, goodness, like that's my brother is carrying that one, right? Because all of a sudden, like you awaken, like the patterns, or even working with clients, sometimes I'll hear a story and it'll resonate. Oh my goodness, that's my cousin. That's my cousin's story. And you all of a sudden you realize, oh, your cousin is carrying that from this person. And you can so clearly, you become aware of where the struggles are. But the thing is that once we create healing for ourselves, right? Because we, our family systems are like a dynamic system. Everything that happens to us, now think of the nervous system.
Yeah.
When you regulate your nervous system, when you become regulated, everybody around you also becomes regulated. Now, if you walk into a room and people are mad and you can tell, oof, the argument went down here, like you can cut the knife, you cut the air with a knife. And you said, all right, let's take a look. What's the problem, guys? Let's see. you were upset about this and you're upset about that. Well, how about we listen to each person's side oh, now everybody understands. Oh, that's what you thought I said? That's not what I meant. I meant this. And the whole room will change, right? As people start understanding each other, everybody's nervous system regulates. Now everybody in the ends with everybody hugging each other. And now everything is very different because we created that awareness of why that argument took place in the first place, which was probably a misunderstanding of some sort, because people come from a place of their own experiences and what regulates their nervous system. So if somebody grew up in a house or was inherited these patterns in their family system that said love is not safe, or this pattern is not safe, they're going to react a certain way, versus somebody else who didn't and had secure attachments. They're going to say, hey, this is just a simple misunderstanding. And then everybody reorganizes, right? Our nervous systems, re-regulate, and we've all become regulated with each other. And now there's not a problem anymore. Just imagine if we could do this for our whole society. What a different society we would have, right? If we could just regulate everybody's nervous system. But that's what it comes down to is, create that awakening within ourselves, because once we have that awareness, everything changes, because when we understand why it is we have a struggle, and we can say, wait a second, this is my mom's struggle. I'm just repeating a pattern, right? Like a hidden alignment. So let's say we have a young woman growing up in a house, and let's say her father was an alcoholic, because it's such a common problem. And it's something that, people are often they don't want to talk about it. There's shame involved in coming from a family like that. But I'm going to tell you, people out there is very common. I see this a lot. And I'm going to say more often, it seems to be the father, though that could just be my population that I see. But let's say we have a young woman growing up, her father is an alcoholic. He drinks on the weekends. Let's say Friday, Saturdays, he binge drinks, and he becomes very verbally abusive. He yells and screams at the kids and to his wife. And this daughter takes a vow and she says, I am never going to marry somebody like you, Dad, right? That's what she tells herself. I am not going to do that. And I, heavily dislike the way you act and the way you treat me and the way you treat mom and everybody else. When you drink, you become this person. So what she's doing is she's rejecting her father. She says, I don't like you. So this is part of the generational rejection, or the G in the light mapping system. So when we reject things, well, it has a very sneaky way of repeating itself. So it's classic. Like, you reject something, it's gonna come back. I see this pattern in my own family. Like, anything that was rejected is gonna come back. Somebody's taking that ticket, says, oh, don't worry, I got this. I'll come heal this, right? And the pattern comes back. So this young woman, she grows up, she finds a man. In many ways, he's very different than her own father. And she loves him deeply. But then what happens is, a few years into this relationship, he starts drinking just like her father did. And he also drinks on Fridays and Saturdays. And he binge drinks and he becomes verbally abusive. She's like, how did I end up in this? How I worked so hard at finding a man that wasn't going to be like my dad. And I'm still finding myself in the same pattern. What is that? It's because it's an unhealed pattern. It's an unhealed relationship with her father. That could, and it really couldn't be healed, right? Because how is she supposed to, as a teenager, talk to her dad and convince him to stop drinking, right? Yeah. That's going to take a lot more therapy than just her sticking her neck out. So it's something, typically it's not like it's anybody's fault, right? It's just a pattern that's been passed down. And we know that this father, he was drinking for a reason, right? Drinking is self-medication. It's like going to the liquor store to get the medicine that's going to make me forget, that's going to make me numb, and I'm going to forget my own trauma or my own bad feelings I have about myself. It's a numbing medicine, right? And so we know that that person comes from some kind of a trauma that person has to numb. So we know there's trauma in the family that may never have been looked at because dad never talked about it. Mm-hmm. So that rejection creates a repetition. So it's an unhealed wound between her and her father and the ancestors. And so the things come back. But when we experience these difficulties in our life, we have to remember this is an opportunity to create healing. It is showing up in your life because the ancestors are saying, hey, this is your chance. You can heal this. And and that's what's so amazing with ancestral healing is like once we start looking at it in a different light and saying, instead of saying, I can't believe I'm in this situation. Why am I always in this situation? Why does my life never go the way I want it to? Take a step out, take a bird's eye view and say, hey, this is an opportunity for me to be a cycle breaker. For some reason, I took this ticket when I incarnated on Earth. Apparently, I thought it was a really good idea to experience all this trauma and all this work. But you know what? Once you figure that out, you are the cycle breaker and you are the healer, and your life will change because you are the person who is taking the steps to create that healing. Because once you see that pattern and once your life change, your nervous system changes, and because your nervous system changed, we know that the frequency we give off is different. Just like walking into that room with people that are mad. When we heal ourselves, our frequency change. We send out a different signal through our nervous system that we are now feeling safe. We are feeling healed. What you tell me no longer bothers me because I know it's not me. That's you, and I can see where it comes from. And when we can create that healing, it creates this ripple effect, right? So everything is connected. We are all connected to each other, but we're all living within this dynamic system where everything ping pongs off each other. It's like playing pool. Like you hit those balls and they all hit each other. I mean, that's literally you and your ancestors. It's like ping 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 ping, right? It's like we all ping pong off each other, right? And we ping pong off each other's nervous systems. So when we feel safe and we don't feel bothered, are you looking forward to the day when you go to, the Thanksgiving dinner? Like a lot of people dread Thanksgiving dinners because they're like, oh, I have to face all these relatives and I don't like this person and that person always creates some argument and right. It can be a lot of stress for a lot of people. But when you're going to walk into that meeting with all your relatives and you're in a different place and you created healing, you're going to have a whole different experience. You're going to start looking at your relatives going, oh, Uncle Bill, whew, I see what you took. You took grandpa stuff. Oh, and Auntie Esther, like you have these issues. Like we start looking at things very differently. And it also, enables us to become a very different person in those situations because we create a calm nervous system for ourselves, because we create healing for ourselves, but also that healing trickles out. And I think one of the most incredible things that happen is when people reach back out to me and say, you won't believe what happened. Like, how we healed. My daughter hadn't spoken to me in 5 years. Guess who just called me? That child that I haven't spoken to in 5 years. And, that is that, you're a medium, so that interconnectedness is absolutely real. And it doesn't matter if it's the spirit world or if they're still here on earth, we are all connected. And we know, just like when you pick up the phone and your best friend is also picking up the phone, not so much maybe now with the cell phones, but back in the day when we had regular phones, and you will get a busy signal and it will go to voicemail. And you're like, oh, so weird. And then you find out that you called each other at the same time, right? You picked up the phone at the exact same second, dialed out those numbers at the exact same time, right? That is the interconnectedness that we have with our friends, with our family, with our ancestors. And when we create healing, guess what? It's going to ripple out. And it doesn't matter if they're in the spirit world or if they're here on earth, because that healing comes through.
This is incredibly powerful because I'm thinking about the story that you talked about with the client who hadn't talked to her daughter in years. So there's no contact. There's not the daughter's physically in contact with the mom's now healed and calm nervous system. She may probably had no idea what was going on with mom, but that healing that was activated, it transcended time and space. And because of that interconnectedness,
Mm-hmm.
there was healing that was dealt on the other recipient, the person, the daughter. This is wild because I'm thinking about families who, like you've mentioned before, people are born into families who've all passed away, or maybe they were
Yep.
adopted, like my mom was, don't know their ancestral lineage.
Yep.
And how do you start healing? Well, you're saying
Mhm.
with Kindraya and your light mapping system, when you heal and initiate that, you're healing all those who came before you, who are
Mhm.
still coexisting in time and space, whether you are aware of them or not, but you're
Mhm.
also healing the generation to come. This
Yep.
is incredible. Literally, if you think about all of the people who are in power right now, politicians and people of privilege, if they had access to this, our
Mhm.
world, Dr. Lotte, would look very, very different. People
Yep.
would feel very different. People would show up differently. This is incredibly, incredibly deep.
Yes. And it's
Wow.
much deeper than we think, right? Because
Yeah.
we're all connected. And I mean, the time for creating healing is now because the world is in chaos and we all know it, right? And we know that the world went into a 1 year this year. So we are ready to start something new and we're ready to start creating healing, not just for ourselves, but when we create, all we have to do is focus on ourselves. And that's the beauty of this because we just have to say, I would like to heal the world. Okay, start with yourself. That's all you have to do. You just have to start understanding your own things that you have to heal because your healing will ripple out and it will affect other people, all your friends, your family, your ancestors. And everybody knows everybody, right? We're only 5 generations removed or something. We all come from the same people back in Africa or
Mhm.
Europe a long time ago, right? We're all related, even through the DNA. But that's so incredibly important, especially today in the world we live in. And it couldn't be more important. And I think this is why everything has come together because I know I'm here as a healer from my own near death experiences and the guidance that I have received in numerology. I'm an 11, so I'm a master healer in this life. And it's in my astrological chart, right? It doesn't matter where I look or where I needed a lot of confirmation because I'm so scientific. And I would just be, no, I need more. I need more proof. Could it really be this way, right? But we are all part of this. We're all part of this journey. And in order for you to heal your family, to heal communication, to heal your own struggles, and to create healing in the world, is to just focus on yourself. Because when you create healing for yourself, it's going to ripple out. And I once had a client who hadn't spoken to her mom in like 10 years. And we did an ancestral healing. And that mom and that daughter, I mean, the mom is probably in her 80s, and the daughter is like probably in her 60s and they speak on the phone every day since we
Mm.
did this healing. And again, the mother had no idea, right? And it's so powerful because I get to hear these incredible stories. And in the beginning, I thought, oh, it's just a coincidence because I'm so scientific. It's just a coincidence, but it's not. I mean, it's like doing mediumship reading the first time. It took me 3 days to trust it at Arthur Findlay College. Like, it's just a coincidence that I got it all right, right? And it can't be this, but there is more to it, right? There's way more to it. So, and it's interesting because when I think of my own journey, I had talked to the spirit world for 25 years. By the time I ended up at Arthur Findlay College, I was still a skeptic, right? That's how scientifically informed I am. I'm always like trying to prove it. Could it be? Is there a possible reason why this would happen that would not be this way, right? And it's good to be critical. You should be, right? Because
Yeah.
it's critical thinking. Does this make sense, right? I mean, that's like clickbait on social media, right?
Yeah.
We learn to screen. We are learning to say, is this AI or not, right? Am I being like, are they tricking me here, like giving me some AI stuff? And there's a lot of AI now. But the thing is that all this is very real, right? And once we understand that the impact we as individual beings have on the entire world, it is incredibly powerful. I mean, life is more mystical than any science fiction movie. I mean, it's just amazing
Yeah.
how divinely guided we are and how mystical our world is. And you know how Einstein would say, spooky action at a distance because he couldn't explain what it was he was experiencing or what he saw. He didn't have words or ways of proving things, I'm going to say that's magic at a distance, right? That is that interconnectedness of we can see things happening and we can't readily explain it yet. But, the people that got the Nobel Prize in physics a few years back, I think 2022, 2023, or something like that, there were three physicists that got the Nobel Prize. And they proved that interconnectedness. They took two pairs of two particles. You have two particles and two particles. And then they took one particle of each pair and they met. Now, of course, the particles that met are connected now because they met. Okay. It's not that hard to figure out. But what happened is interesting because the particles that were left behind that didn't meet, they were now connected to the other particle that was left behind, even though they had never met, because they were part of the pair, and that other pair got to meet one pair from the other particle. Well, so think of it this way, let's say we have two sisters in one family and two brothers in another family. Well, they grow up and the oldest girl goes to the same college as the oldest boy in the other family, and they now meet. And they don't know anything about their families, but they're best friends in college. Well, the sister that's still living at home and going to high school, just like the brother that's still living at home and he's going to high school, they are now connected, right? When you think of it like the two particles, they never met. Their sister and their brothers met, but they're now connected. And so what they showed with these particles was that whatever happens to particle A is going to affect particle B, right? So the particles that stayed behind. So the sister that's still in high school and the brother that's still in high school, they're not connected, and their actions and reactions are going to affect each other. That's what they said. I'm just using humans as an example. We haven't proved that it's this way for humans, but that's basically what they showed with these particles in physics. But it's really interesting because it makes you understand that interconnectedness, and more science will probably come in the next few years. But it's fascinating because it makes us understand that everything is interconnected at a certain level.
This is incredibly fascinating for me. I love science. My husband loves it more. And I go, oh my goodness, some things you have to kind of like take for a moment and let it digest. But when it does, it's like that actually makes perfect sense.
Hmm.
And when we're talking about ancestral healing and your work with Kindraya, people often worry. I mean, I've heard this from clients myself. They worry about doing ancestral healing. Is it going to make them relive trauma or that they need to be intuitive? How does Kindraya make this work feel really grounded and safe and accessible?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Um, Yeah, so I'm going to be teaching a course, actually that's coming up at the Shift Network, and it's going to be a 7-week course, and each class is 90 minutes long, and for an hour I teach, and every class is going to have at least probably 30 minutes of that's going to be experiential. So we're going to be tuning in a lot. And in the first class, we learned a little bit about the light mapping system, and we dip our toes in our clairs and start using our intuitive abilities. And then as we go on, we work with the clairs. So I'm gonna help people like tune into their intuitive abilities, and then we dig deeper into the light mapping system, and then we start putting it all together, right? And we create that safety of, how do we create safety in our nervous system? We keep things at a distance. We learn to watch. We learn to just be present. There's nothing to be fixed. We're just watching. And so it's a very intuitive and safe approach to, letting things come up. And when things come up, we're just going to kind of say, all right, I see you. And, then take that, well, how does that affect me in my body? Never thought of that before. And we kind of go through all the different steps using our clairvoyant, clairaudient, clairsentient, claircognizant abilities. And that's going to be really fun too, because it will help people tune into their clairs. We all have clairs, as you know, but which one is it that's more dominant for you? Some people might have a little bit of everything. somebody may only have one clair, and there is no right and wrong way. There's no way that's better than the other, right? And we all know when you work as a medium, what's your strongest clair?
Clairaudience, well, I would say clairsentience and then clairaudience. Yeah.
Clairsentience, clairaudience, right? And mine is clairvoyance. So I get like movies, like a little movie all the time. And it's really interesting. And then I get um I'm gonna say the rest is divided by clairaudience, clairsentience, claircognizance, depending on what what it is that I'm tuning into, right? And we all, and this, as you know, we all have this, but when we're working with the ancestral healing part, we often know things, but we just never even tuned in to figure out what it is that we're feeling or what is this information that I'm getting, right? And so we're going to learn to tune into that, and then we're going to learn to map it. And then the last 30 minutes of every class is asking questions. And, if anybody needs clarification, we're going to have a private group. It's not on Facebook. It's going to be on the Shift Network platform where people can ask questions there too. And I'm really looking forward to this because I feel like this is something that is so accessible to all people, regardless whether they know their ancestral history or not. But it's a way of learning how to tune into your issues and resolve your issues. And it's awakening that within you. So it's something you will be able to come back to over and over again. And the more you get used to it and the more you use it, the more things you'll be able to see and resolve. And it's just, it's going to be, I look at it as a journey. It's a transformative journey of creating healing, for yourself, but also for all your family, your friends, and for the earth itself, for the people on the earth.
What inspired you to bring Kindraya to the Network now? And how do you feel that this work is especially supportive at this moment in time?
Yeah, I'm going to say the times that we're in right now is a chaotic time, right? And we know that. The world was in a 9 year last year, so it was wrapping up things, and we're starting something new now. And this is the time where we really have a change. We have a chance to change the world because it's not just one country. That's, everything we're doing, the way we're interacting as countries with each other, the way we're interacting as citizens with each other, it all matters. And it's time for everybody to rise to the surface and say, hey, we all want the same thing. We all want connection. We all want stability. We all want love. We're human species, right? Like every animal. We are just part of the earth as this animal. And I think this is a time, especially as we're in a 1 year, the time is now to create healing. The time is now to create healing for ourselves, for our family, for our ancestors, and for the world. And the more people we can heal and the more people that's part of this journey, the better the world will become. Because as we change our nervous system, we change the world.
Absolutely. If someone listening feels a quiet pull towards this work but isn't really sure why, what would you want them to know to trust or take with them?
Just go for it. So there actually, the Shift Network is, I'm going to have a free event with the Shift Network too. And I'm going to make sure you have the link to put in your podcast notes so that people can just click on that. I'm going to have a free event. It's going to be February 3rd and February 7th, and they can come to the Shift Network. And I'm going to be talking with Stephen Deenan, who is the founder of the Shift Network, about the course. And we're going to go a little bit more in depth and talk a little bit about the different modules. Um, and it's a really an amazing opportunity for people to create healing in their own life. Um, and I would say if you feel pulled, if you feel like, wow, this could be something, that I may benefit from, or my family, or my children, whatever, I'm going to say that is the pull. That is the pull from the ancestors. It's also a pull for why you incarnated, because there is a reason why you're listening to this podcast today. There is a reason why you feel pulled. And we are intuitive creatures. And I'm going to say you follow that intuition. There's something that's pulling you, just like when I work with people, they say, I was awake in the middle of the night. I've heard this story so many times. And I just felt so lost. And I told the spirit world, I need somebody who can guide me. And I opened up YouTube, and then you showed up, right? And here we are doing a healing, ancestral healing. And it's fascinating because we are all guided, right? And so I'm going to say, you listen to this podcast, there's a reason you got tapped on the shoulder and said, hey, turn on this. You might be driving in your car, or you might be sitting at home. There is a reason why you feel pulled to it. There is something that's calling you from the inside. Listen to that, because you're going to heal yourself, your family, your friends, and you're going to help heal the world. You're like one of the light workers that incarnated into this time that we're living on this roller coaster ride, right? But we're all told that we came here for a reason. We're part of the people that came here to heal the world. So I'm going to say,
Absolutely
you know,
beautiful.
yeah.
This is major work. This is so needed more than ever. You're absolutely right. Dr. Lotte, thank you so much for being on the show and for sharing this incredible new program. I know that people are going to really benefit from it. For those of you that are listening, you can tap on the link in the show notes to access this beautiful program, Kindraya Ancestral Healing and Light Mapping System with Dr. Lotte Valentine, and all of her contact information is below. Thank you so much for sharing your love, your light, and your wisdom with my listeners.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
The Connected Spirit isn't just a podcast, it's a remembering of who we are, a remembering of our connection to spirit, and a remembering that we are never walking this path alone. Mediumship isn't just about speaking with spirits, it's about deepening the connection to our own spirit, to one another, and to the energy that moves through everything. So as you leave this space, ask yourself, what part of this conversation stirred something within you? What connection is spirit inviting you to strengthen? If this episode spoke to you, please share it, leave a review, and connect with me on Instagram at Medium Courtney Dawson, or visit my website at mediumcourtneydawson.com. Your presence in this community matters, because connection isn't just about what we seek, it's what we are. Until next time, trust your spirit, trust the unseen world, and trust that you are always, always connected.